Judit Polgar is by far the greatest female chess player of all time. She is the only woman chess player to have been in the top 10 chess players in the entire world. She is playing against another legend, a world champion for 10 years, the final boss on reality TV shows, the one and only Anatoly Karpov. Now, Karpov is a positional beast. If positional style of chess is an ocean, Karpov is like the killer whale in it. In this game, Karpov opens up with the Queen's Indian opening, which perfectly suits his style. Karpov plays d4, Judit Polgar plays knight f6, taking control of the e4 square, knight f3, developing a piece. Polgar plays e6, Karpov plays the move c4, and now Polgar goes b6. The idea is to fianchetto the bishop to b7, and this marks the beginning of the Queen's Indian defense. Karpov plays the move a3. The idea is to take control of the b4 square so that this bishop doesn't land on b4. Polgar continues her development with bishop to b7, knight to c3, and now Judith goes d5, striking in the center. Karpov takes, Polgar takes back with knight into d5. You can also take with e into d5, but the thing here is that it kind of limits, the pawn kind of limits the bishop. So that's why Judith goes knight into d5. Karpov defends this knight with queen c2 and also develops the queen. Judith takes the knight. Karpov takes back the knight, and Judith plays h6. The idea of h6 is just to stop either the knight or the bishop from landing on the g5 square. Karpov plays the move e3, wanting to develop the bishop. Remember, you don't want to play knight c6 because this would just result in a bad position, a lost position in fact, after bishop b5. There is a pin here and you cannot escape it. Let's say you try to defend it with something like queen d7, there is knight e5. There are just too many attackers and too few defenders. Okay, so knight c6 is a mistake. Judith goes knight d7 here. And now even if white goes bishop b5, black can always play bishop d6 and take control of this e5 square so that white doesn't play knight e5. White decides to go e4. Karpov's idea is to fianchetto this bishop, and at the same time he is gaining more space on the queen side. Judith now develops her bishop to e7. Karpov fianchettos the bishop and Judith short castles. And now in this position, there is a dangerous battery along this diagonal. White could go d5 and there is a checkmate threat here. But black can challenge white's battery with the move bishop f6. Okay, so d5 at the moment is not the most effective move to play. Karpov plays rook d1, placing the rook on the same file as the queen, a very useful strategy. And now Judith says, white's pieces are not still developed fully, so let me start to create some counterplay on the queen side. And that's why she plays the move a5. White pushes the pawn on b5. White doesn't want to open the position, and at the same time this pawn creates a bind on the queen side. Now think, if you are Judith, how would you continue in this position? There is a very nice strategic idea. Okay, so in the game, Polgar plays the move rook to c8. And the idea is next move she's going to play c6 and open this c file for the rook and activate her pieces. So in the game, white plays queen b3, steps out of this c file, and Judith goes c6 following up her plan, bc6, to which she captures with the bishop into c6. And now Karpov develops this piece with the move bishop to b5. As it turns out, this is a mistake. The better move would have been to play bishop e2 and just peacefully castle. Now think, why is bishop b5 a bad move? Okay, so in the game, Judith finds a very nice way to punish this move. She goes bishop to b4 check, sacrificing a bishop only temporarily, because after a b4, black takes bishop into b5, and now this bishop stops the white king from castling. And as long as this white king cannot castle, it means this king is not going to first find safety, and secondly, this rook is not going to get developed anytime soon. Karpov takes the pawn, and now you may think that if ba5 is not possible because you lose the bishop, but instead black has a very nice intermediate move by playing bishop to c4, hitting the queen And once the queen runs away, Polgar grabs this a5 pawn. Karpov plays the move queen to d6, trying to create some counterplay by getting his queen in an active position. But now Judith finds a very nice maneuver to create an attack against the white king. Can you find it? And now before I ask, now in this position, if you notice, this black bishop, now in this position, if you notice, both sides have a bishop, but black's bishop is a very dangerous piece and it cannot be challenged by white's bishop. Black is controlling all these light squares. And this is often what you should be doing when you have opposite colored bishops. You want to make sure you have the initiative. You want to make sure you are the one who's attacking. Because often what that means is you literally get an extra piece in attack. A piece that literally cannot be challenged. Just like this c4 bishop. How would you continue if you were black? Think about it. Polgar finds a very nice way to continue. She goes bishop to b5 first. White plays the move d5, trying to create some counterplay in the center. And Polgar goes rook to c2, hitting the bishop. And at the same time, there is a very dangerous threat. If you play d into e6, there is rook e2 check, hitting the king. And once the king moves, there is rook d2 check. And on the next turn, you win the queen and the game. So after rook c2, Karpov has to stop this rook e2 idea. And he goes rook d2. Now remember, Karpov is a very good defender. In fact, he is considered to be one of the best defenders of all time. Now Judith Polgar decides to bring one more piece into the attack. She plays a very quiet move, queen to c8, supporting this rook, and at the same time she has a very dangerous threat. Once again, Karpov doesn't have time to take this e6 pawn because there is rook into b2. And if you let's say capture this knight, you are just losing after queen c1 check, and yeah, this is winning. King f1, there is, you can give this check from the bishop, and yeah, the game finishes here. So e into d7 cannot be played, but if white captures this rook, then black has this check. The only way to stop the check is to put the queen in the middle, but then the black queen captures the rook, and after you capture the knight, the very calm rook d8 just gives black a huge advantage. Because once again, this white king cannot castle, which means this rook cannot come into the game. This king is in danger. Black is simply going to take this pawn, and black also has a pass pawn here, and it's going to help them win the game very easily. So Karpov had to go back and defend this bishop with the move queen to a3. Judith decides it's time to chop off this rook. Karpov takes with the king, hoping to get this rook in the game. But Judith gives one more threat with the move knight to b6. Now the threat is to go knight c4 check and just win the queen. But Karpov finds the move queen to c3, offering to exchange queens and at the same time threatening a checkmate on g7. Okay, good defense. Judith plays the move knight to c4 check. Okay, first she blocks this queen trade. Once the king moves, she plays the move e5, blocking the queen from staring at this g7 pawn. If you go knight e5, it wouldn't work because knight e5 just wins the knight and you cannot take the knight because there is a pin on the c file. So that's why after e5, Karpov decides to run away with king b1. The queen suddenly bursts onto the scene with the move queen to g4. Now suddenly the queen is starting to attack white's king side, and it's very hard for white to defend against this invasion. For example, let's say if seeing that there is a threat on g2, white decides to play rook to g1. Then black has this simple check. Let's say the king moves to a1 and just simple rook d8. This rook is as well coming into the game. This queen is already on a very active square, and anytime you play knight e5, black is gonna take, give this check, king moves and give this check and finish off the game. Once again, we see the power of this light squared bishop, and the fact that white cannot cover the light squares makes it very hard to defend. So after the queen comes to g4, Karpov decides it's time to consolidate his position, plays rook c1. Finally, the rook comes into the game. Before grabbing this pawn on b2, Polgar plays a very quiet rook b8 move. Just getting a rook on the open file, getting the rook to aim at this king. Okay, very useful move to make. Karpov plays rook c2, protecting this bishop in case, this black bishop moves and tries to create some sort of threats here. Polgar, before grabbing this g2 pawn, plays a very calm move that stops most of white's counterplay, and that is she goes f6. Now knight e5 is no longer a possibility, and the whole diagonal, that is the whole a1 to h8 diagonal that is there, it gets blunted. Okay, these queen and bishops are literally staring into a wall of pawns. Karpov, now desperate for some sort of counterplay, plays d6. Judith simply grabs this pawn, attacks the knight, so the knight jumps back to d2. Judith gives a check on h1, forces the king to move, and after this Judith plays a very simple move, knight to d6. Grabbing the pawn, white's king is just very exposed in the position. Karpov plays the move queen to c5, hoping to get some counterplay by attacking the knight, but Judith plays a very quiet move, rook to c8. If white captures the knight, he will lose the rook, and after queen b8 check, the king has nothing to worry about. It can go to h7, and if you take the bishop, there is simply rook into d2. Not only is white down an exchange, but white is also down pawns. His king is exposed, and there is not a lot that he can do in the position. So that's why after the move rook to c8 in the game, Karpov resigned. Polgar won a very beautiful game, showing her great attacking skills and taking down a positional beast like Karpov. Don't forget to smash the like button for Judit Polgar. Thank you very much. I'll see you in another video.